Good morning, everybody. Everybody well this morning? Few thumbs up. Yeah, my name is Rich. If you are a visitor this morning, we just want to just a particular welcome to you. Just great to have you with us. If you're not normally with us and you're passing through Whitney or something, welcome. And that's not just a welcome because, like when you go to M&S, they welcome you because they think you're going to spend some money. It's welcome because we think actually God the Father welcomes us and we want to reflect something of his welcome. So I really welcome if you are new and passing through our church this morning. If you have a Bible, please open it. And we really do strongly encourage everyone to bring Bibles on Sunday mornings. It's great to have on your phone. Even better, I'd say, to have it in paper. Get the whole thing in front of you. Mark chapter 6, that's where we're headed this morning. We're spending this term looking at Mark, the Gospel of Mark. Just before I jump into that, just one more bit of news just to add. As John just mentioning there about that assisted dying bill going through Parliament next week. There's actually two important bills going through Parliament next week. One connected with a change to the abortion law, and one connected to what is essentially euthanasia, the assisted dying bill at the end of next week. We think we should pray for those things. And next Wednesday, we have a prayer and worship evening in the hall next week, 7:45. But also during the day next Wednesday, Dave and Chris Richards, who are not with us this weekend, they're in Poland, I think. Next Wednesday, they have said they want to open their house between 10 and 4. Anybody wants to come and drop in during the day. They live in Freeland and spend some time praying for our nation, specifically those two bills, but generally for our nation, for the state of things in our country, for God to move again. They're going to do that. So like an open home of prayer during the day next Wednesday. And then in the evening, we can all come together and pray in the room, in the hall next door. So next Wednesday is essentially like a kind of day of prayer for us as a church. Dave and Chris opening up their home during the day. Two specific things to pray for, as well as praying for our nation. And then in the evening, we can come together in the hall next door and pray for all sorts of things and worship Jesus together. If you don't know where Dave and Chris live, look out in the church email on Monday. We'll put the address in there. They live in Freeland, so it's not in Whitney. You do need to drive there if you're in Whitney. So that's next Wednesday. Just wanted to sort of underline that. Back to Mark. A couple of weeks ago, we were in chapter 5, and we had Norma Norden from Sweden. Today, we're jumping into chapter 6. The Gospel of Mark is fast. It's like an action movie. It is action after action. There's pace. It's quick. Jesus is going from place to place, people to people. And today we arrive at one of the most famous miracles of them all. And in fact, it's the only miracle of Jesus which we see in all four Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all agreed on this thing. They all said, we need to put this one in. And that is the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which I imagine many of us are familiar with. And even if you're not sort of super used to faith and the Bible, you probably remember or aware of this story. It's in chapter 6. If you just jump back to chapter 5, where we were a couple of weeks ago, the beginning of chapter 5, and Jesus restoring a man who was possessed by a demon. Pretty extraordinary story. Verse 21 of chapter 5, Jesus leaves that place. He goes across the Sea of Galilee, where he spends much of these chapters, and meets a man called Jairus, who says, my daughter's ill, please can you come? Jesus says, okay. Then on the way, a lady touches him, and Jesus stops, heals her. So like on the way to one miracle, he does another miracle, gets to Jairus' house. The little girl's died. Jesus raises her from the dead. In chapter 6, Jesus then leaves there, and he visits other villages in the area. So, beginning of chapter 6, first of all, he goes to Nazareth, his hometown, where he grew up, and he's rejected. And then the next little bit of chapter 6, he visits all sorts of villages around, and he sends his disciples out on mission. He sends the 12 to go out on mission. Chapter 6, verse 14, the next little story is about John the Baptist's death. Really shocking, horrible story of John the Baptist being beheaded, John the Baptist being Jesus' cousin. So that's sort of brutal news for Jesus to hear. Then chapter 6, verse 30, we get the miracle we're going to see in a moment. Jesus feeding 5,000 people, as he do. And then from there, verse 45, he heads back to the Sea of Galilee, or not just to the Sea of Galilee, on the Sea of Galilee, as he walks on water. And then chapter 7, He interacts with some Pharisees who've come all the way from Jerusalem just to quiz him and try and catch him out. And then the end of chapter 7, Jesus leaves Israel for one of the very few times in the Gospels. He's busy. If you think you had a busy week, Jesus is busy here. So this miracle we're about to read is in the context of Jesus being seriously active. He's at the height of his ministry. He's traveling around, he's healing, he's teaching, he's delivering demons, he's walking on water, he's arguing with leaders, he's performing miracles. And in this context of busyness and activity, Jesus pauses and feeds thousands of people, provides for a lost and hungry people. We're going to read these verses together. Might need you to do it, Edwin. I think it's stopped cooperating. Chapter 6, verse 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Remember, they'd just been sent on mission. Then, because so many people were coming and they didn't even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them, and they ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. And when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But Jesus answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5. Oh, and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. It's a pretty remarkable story, isn't it? Even if for many of us it's very familiar, it's a pretty remarkable story. I'm going to show you some paintings. Anna and I we spent many years living in Belgium. Belgium's famous for many fine things of life. I think Florence has just had the privilege of spending this week in Belgium, eating Belgian chocolate, Belgian waffles maybe, Tintin. There was a time when Belgium was a bit more famous than just for waffles and beer. The Flemish masterpieces of the 16th, 17th century were very famous. Here's one by a man called Pieter Bruegel, and it's called The Fight Between Carnival and Lent. It's the name of this painting. Carnival being the week of what is Shrove Tuesday for us, Mardi Gras for many cultures. It's the fight between the Carnival, when it's all partying and nice food, and Lent, when it's all very serious and fasting. There's one thing going on in this picture. It's the fight between Carnival and Lent. But actually, there's tons of things going on in this picture. There's like 200 people in this picture. What about this one? Recognize that picture, some of us? L.S. Lowry, his famous picture of the fun fair. There's like one main thing going on in the picture. People are going to the fun fair. But there's an awful lot of people, and there's an awful lot of activity going on. Anyone slightly less culturally highbrow? Where's Wally? There's one thing going on in the picture. Wally is on the beach somewhere. You've all got a couple of minutes to find him. But actually, there's hundreds of things going on. And actually, that is exactly what's happening in the scriptures that we've just read. There's one main thing. 5,000 people get to eat bread. That's what the story's about. But actually, there's all sorts of little things going on as well, which are really important for us for understanding the main idea. And actually, all of them take us back to the Old Testament. So just in the next 25 minutes now, we're going to look at some of the details, some of the individual people. Anyone seen him? Too late. Let's just go back to the beginning. The apostles, verse 30, gathered around Jesus, reports to him all they'd done and taught. As I said, just come back from mission. So, this has happened. We saw this demon flee. We saw this person healed. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have a chance to eat. It's not only do the people get hungry, but the disciples are hungry. Jesus says to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. To a quiet place. Verse 32, if you've got your Bible in front of you, also quotes a solitary place. Verse 35 talks about a remote place, a quiet place, a solitary place, a remote place. 3 different words, except in Greek, New Testament is written in Greek, it's actually only 1 word. Mark is pretty stingy with his vocabulary. The NIV translators here can't quite cope with that. So they've gone for 3 synonyms for what is the same word in Greek. And it's the same word which we read 4 times in the opening chapter of Mark, where John the Baptist goes out into a desert. And then where Jesus, after his baptism, gets sent out into a desert. Translators have no problem in chapter 1 telling us it's a desert. The same word Mark uses 3 times in these few verses to say that these people are being taken out into the desert. Just remember the context of the passage. They are physically drained. They are exhausted, these disciples. They've just come back from the mission field. They are emotionally drained. John the Baptist has been killed, and brutally, violently. They are crazy busy. Endless activity. They are peopled out. They want to be alone. Anyone identify with that sometimes? And Jesus looks to take care of them by taking them to a quiet place. A solitary place, which actually is a desert. What's the definition of a desert? Somewhere where, strictly speaking, there's almost no precipitation. That's a desert, isn't it? Where nothing can really grow. So this desert that Jesus finds, it's not a desert of sand and cacti, but it's an empty, desolate, inhospitable place. So the disciples are tired and pressured and emotionally drained. And Jesus says, I know, we'll go to the desert. We read in a minute that the people are tired and lost and hungry. So the first detail in this painting that Mark is drawing for us, it's a miracle of bread being provided for a tired people in the desert. Does that set off any Old Testament alarm bells? People of Israel leave Egypt and they get taken into the desert, and they spend 40 years in the desert where every day they eat manna, which is really a little bit like bread. So the first thing to notice about our story, the first little detail, is that the story happens in a remote place, a desert. Let's keep going. Verse 33. Many who saw them leaving recognized them. Of course they did. And ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Quite a dramatic moment. All these hundreds, thousands of people sprinting around the Sea of Galilee to get to Jesus. When Jesus landed and he saw a large crowd, just pause there. How would you respond? Like this? Probably not. He had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Isn't that beautiful? They go to the boats to be alone, the crowd finds them, and Jesus responds impeccably by seeing them for what they are, like sheep without a shepherd. Okay, second alarm bell going off. That is a seriously rich Old Testament phrase. Here's just a handful of moments in the Old Testament where we see that phrase, sheep without a shepherd. Numbers 27, that's Moses speaking to God, saying, I don't want the people to be like sheep without a shepherd. Just before he dies, he says those words. Joshua's going to come. I hope he can be a shepherd to the people. 1 Kings 22, that's a prophet called Micaiah, I think. And he's warning to the kings. He's saying, I think I'm afraid the people are going to be like sheep without a shepherd, the people of Israel. What Moses didn't want. Another example, Ezekiel 34, that's God speaking. And God's rebuking the leaders of Israel, saying, you've messed it up. You were meant to be shepherds for the people, but you haven't, and they are now like sheep without a shepherd. And in verse 11 of Ezekiel 34, we read God saying, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. So Moses says, I hope they're never sheep without a shepherd. One of the prophets comes along and says, I'm afraid I think they're going to be sheep without a shepherd. Hundreds of years later, God himself says, they're like sheep without a shepherd, the people. So I'm going to be their shepherd. That's what God says. So this common, rich Old Testament phrase, and Jesus comes along and says, hey, I'm here. The promised good shepherd is here. Let's keep going. Verse 35, by this time it was late in the day, so Jesus' disciples came to him. This is a remote place. This is a desert, they said. It's already very late. Send the people away so they can go and buy themselves some food. There's an interaction back and forth. And Jesus says, you do it. You do the miracle. And verse 39 says, Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. The third little detail on this painting. Just worth noticing that Jesus orders them into groups just for ease. In other words, there's order and there's peace in the midst of the miraculous. Supernatural doesn't have to mean chaos, panic. Actually, there's administration here and there's peace in the midst of the supernatural. Where does Jesus take them? Makes them sit down on what? Green grass. That's an intriguing detail, isn't it? Mark is very deliberate in the details he tells us. It's the shortest gospel. It's the quickest of all of them. It's not like Matthew or John that have lots of details, lots of extra adjectives. Mark is short. He's quick. Therefore, when he uses a word, we've got to pay even more attention to it. He's just told us 3 times they're in the desert. And then he says, oh, by the way, in the desert, Jesus manages to find some grass, some green grass. Green grass, that speaks of life, of abundance, of growth in the desert. One of our houses we lived in Belgium, we bought it, I think when we had 3 children and 3 boys, and it had a garden, not enormous garden, kind of normal sort of shaped size garden, and nice grass growing on it on day 1. We lived there, I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years. 7 or 8 years later, 3 boys later, there wasn't no grass when we left. It was terrible. And after a couple of years, first sort of 6 months, I was like, boys, don't play on the grass. And after a while, we just thought, oh, stuff it. They've got to play on the grass. Of course they have. They've got to play football. We're in a big urban city. They need to play. And they trash that grass. We now live in a house in Whitney which has no grass at all either, because it's like a courtyard at the back of our house. Grass speaks of growth, of life, of abundance. Should also send off all sorts of other bells ringing from the Old Testament. Up to this point in the Bible, there is only one other moment where we read of green grass. Anyone picture it? Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is written by who? It's written by David. What was his job? Oh, he was a shepherd, like a shepherd king. And he says, oh, the Lord is my shepherd, capital L. He'll make me lie down in green pastures, in green grass. And centuries later, about 1,000 years later, Jesus comes along in the desert and he brings these sheep without a shepherd, says, hey, here's some green grass. Anna and I have, as I said, we have 4 children. And that means Anna was pregnant 4 times, therefore, that means 3 of those 4 pregnancies were awful. Like, properly awful. and I had something called hyperemesis, which is like on the spectrum of morning sickness. It's like over there somewhere. And for some reason, one of the pregnancies wasn't so awful, but 3 of them were awful. And I would have like months and months of her pregnancy of having to stay in her bedroom. Any bit of light coming in from the curtain, sickness. A little bit of water, she'd puke up. She'd been hospitalized several times, put on a drip. That for us, it was a bit of a desert experience, actually. Of course, people in the world who have far, far more, much more extreme, unpleasant pregnancies, of course. But for us, actually, it was really quite tough. I was a sort of single dad for a few months each time. Any sort of human contact would just be enough to send Anna into puking up. Our kids, didn't have mum around. It was not straightforward. And actually, you don't know that experience, but for us, when we were in Brussels, that was like a big experience for us and our church family really helping us through those moments. It was a bit of a desert experience for us. And I had a bit of a choice, and I could speak for myself, but I had a bit of a choice of where's the green grass in this desert? And the thing is, there are different types of deserts, aren't there? I'm no geological expert, but there are deserts like the Sahara Desert. There are deserts like in Israel, which there's no sand and cactuses, but there are inhospitable places. I think the largest desert in the world is Antarctica, technically, I think. Cleverer people than me can help me with that. There is no precipitation. There are different types of deserts, and that's just we were worshipping. I just felt God said that there'd be different types of deserts in the room this morning. And the trick is finding the Good Shepherd and helping him lead us to green grass when we're in the desert experience. Maybe your prayer life just feels like a desert. Like you open your mouth and don't know what to say, nothing. You open the scriptures in the morning and nothing. Maybe there's key relationships in your life that are just like desert-like. Whether that's with your spouse or with your children, just feels like a desert. The call is to find the Good Shepherd in the desert and let him lead you to green grass, because that's what he does. He helps us find green grass in the desert. It's this painting, which we're seeing here in Mark 6, the main event, thousands of people being fed. In the background, we've got this Exodus manna-like provision, people getting bread in the desert. We've got the Old Testament concept of people being like sheep without a shepherd. And then I think undoubtedly we've got Psalm 23 here in Mark's mind. The most famous psalm of all, it seems to be in Mark's mind. Mark seems to be saying, hey, the Good Shepherd, he's here. He might be in a desert, but the shepherd promised of old is now here. And if you follow him, he'll lead you into green grass. Amen. Sorry, Edwina, I've lost it. Next one. Let's keep going. Verse 40. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven. Jesus gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he said to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them. They all ate and they were satisfied. They all ate and were satisfied. Like they had a whole meal. It wasn't just a snack. You know, when the last time you had a really good meal where you were full? Friday evening, Anna and I ate at Nico and Joe's house. We ate a lot of food. We came home, we were satisfied. Last night, Anna cooked for myself and Keith and Kate as we ate a meal at our house. We ate a lot. We were satisfied. This wasn't just a snack. These disciples, these people were happy. They were fulfilled. They were satisfied. There's also all sorts of Old Testament references in that as well. Just look at some of these. The book of Ruth, for example, a beautiful book which starts with a woman who loses everything. Ruth loses everything. She is a desolate, poor, poverty-stricken widow, has nothing, no bread. Middle of chapter 2, after meeting a Christ-like figure In Boaz, she eats and she is satisfied. And actually, she even has some left over. Ezekiel, back to Ezekiel 34, the same passage we just referred to. I think I might have flipped on a bit too much. There we go. There's some more. Deuteronomy 8, right in the law. When you've eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God. Psalm 22, the poor will eat and be satisfied. Psalm 23, we just read, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of your life. Life with the Good Shepherd is not a promise that life will always be wonderful. That's obviously not the promise, is it? Life can be really hard. It's really hard for the disciples here. They're tired. They're busy. John's just been murdered. People are trying to kill Jesus. Huge pressure. They don't have any homes. They don't have income. Life's really hard for them. Life might be hard for some of us. That's not the promise. The promise is that one who looks after us brings us satisfaction in life, brings us to green grass. Let's look at the final element, verse 43. The disciples then picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Therefore, we assume the number of women, similar, children, many more. We're talking about an enormous multitude. The disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. Not only did they eat enough, they had some left over. That's a miracle, yeah? In fact, they have more at the end than at the beginning. That does not happen in my house. There's leftovers here. Plenty of leftovers. A key component of the Good Shepherd is that there's some leftovers for others. The Good Shepherd is interested in these thousands. He's interested in many other thousands as well. He's come for not just the 99 sheep. He's come for that other sheep that's gone away somewhere. There's much left over here. Ruth had what she needed, and there was some more to share. God says in Ezekiel 34, God himself says, you've not brought back the strays or searched for the lost, he says. I will search for the lost and bring them back. The heart of the Good Shepherd, is to bring back other sheep. His heart is always missional. There's something in the heart of the shepherd that wants to gather in other sheep. It's not just about us who are in the room this morning. His heart is always for more sheep to be added. He's a good sheep that goes after the number one, the one as well as the 99, as we've heard. We're surrounded by people in our town, in our villages, who are like sheep without a shepherd. You don't have to go very far to see sheep without a shepherd in the streets and in our neighbours. It's not just about a cozy life on those green pastures with our shepherd. That's not the end of the story. We want many others to join, don't we? That's why we love people in our town who need to know more about Jesus, because they need to know the Good Shepherd that we know. There's plenty left over. So this is a story which is like a beautiful painting. Jesus feeds the 5,000. That's what we can see. That's straightforward. But there's an awful lot of other things going on here. And crucially, he leads sheep into green grass in the desert. Kate just read to us earlier that challenge of maybe some of us are running on empty. That's probably another language to use if you feel like you're in a bit of a desert. You're running on empty. You haven't been refueled by the green grass of God for a significant time. All I want to say as we finish is the Good Shepherd's here. He's come. He was promised and he's come. He's a good shepherd who provides abundantly for all of us, even in the desert. This is a more beautiful picture than a medieval masterpiece or a Where's Wally cartoon. There's green grass in the desert available for all of us. Keith and Kate, are you happy to come back up again? It'd be great if we just as we come to an end of our morning, just to respond to the Good Shepherd. To take a moment before we finish to respond to this kind, good shepherd who wants to lead us into abundance. When we had those deeply challenging season for us, for our own little desert, we had to say, Lord, show me the green grass. I had a choice. Lord, show me the green grass. I just want to say to all of us in the room, whatever sort of desert section of your life it is, I want to encourage you to come to the Good Shepherd and say, Lord, lead me to that green grass. Might still remain in the desert. Might still have to not leave the desert. But there can be refreshment and abundance in the desert. Is there an amen? Amen. Keith's going to lead us. Could we stand? Let's just use this song, this moment of response at the end of our meeting. We've broke bread, remembered what Christ has done for us, remembered the good works of Jesus at the cross, which changes everything. He is still very much active in our lives. He's still ready to lead us by the hand and show us those green pastures, show us abundance and life and growth. In a minute, we'll give a chance for people to be prayed for, but let's first just set our hearts on the Lord in song and in worship together.